The Galactic Council, an entity of immense power and influence, oversaw countless species across the galaxy. For millennia, its demands for tribute were met without resistance. Resources, technologies, and even lives flowed into its coffers, fueling its dominion and maintaining the fragile balance of power in the cosmos. This system had endured because no species dared to challenge it. Compliance was the only option in a galaxy ruled by the might of the Council's fleets and its control over interstellar trade routes. Humanity, a relatively new entrant into the galactic fold, had caught the Council's attention. Earth was rich in resources, its people industrious, and its technology advancing at an unsettling pace. From the Council's perspective, humanity was ripe for exploitation, a young civilization that lacked the unity or strength to resist. The Council's emissaries transmitted a formal demand to Earth's leaders, outlining their expectations with the casual arrogance of a power accustomed to obedience. The message was clear: humanity was required to surrender a portion of its raw materials, including precious metals and rare isotopes, alongside technological blueprints and a significant workforce. Failure to comply would result in swift and decisive military action. The tone left no room for negotiation. The Council had made similar demands of countless other civilizations, and none had dared refuse. Human leaders received the ultimatum in silence, their deliberations hidden from the prying eyes of the galaxy. The Council's assumption that humanity would capitulate was rooted in precedent, not fact. To the Council, humanity was just another species to be subdued, its unique traits irrelevant in the face of galactic authority. But the humans saw things differently. To them, this was not a mere demand for resources, it was an attack on their sovereignty, a direct challenge to their independence and dignity. The leaders of Earth recognized the stakes immediately. Accepting the Council's terms would reduce humanity to a vassal state, dependent on the whims of an alien bureaucracy. The precedent it would set could not be undone. Future demands would grow more severe until humanity's autonomy was but a memory. Refusal, however, carried its own risks. The Council's fleets were formidable, their technological superiority long established. Yet humanity's history was one of defying expectations, of thriving against the odds. After careful deliberation, Earth's leaders crafted a response. It was brief, direct, and utterly defiant. Humanity would not pay tribute, they declared. Instead, they would send a tribute of their own choosing, a gift that would demonstrate their understanding of the Council's position. The message was cryptic, its intent obscured. It lacked the deference the Council expected, yet it stopped short of outright provocation. To the galaxy at large, it seemed a desperate gambit, the posturing of a species unable to grasp the magnitude of the forces aligned against it. The Council interpreted the reply as a thinly veiled plea for mercy, masked by bravado. Their analysts dismissed humanity's capacity for resistance, citing incomplete intelligence that painted Earth as a planet still struggling to unify its factions. Reports highlighted humanity's history of internal conflict, their seemingly inefficient political systems, and their reliance on outdated technologies. To the Council, Earth was no more a threat than the countless other worlds they had subdued. The Council's confidence was absolute. They had no reason to doubt the outcome of this encounter. If humanity persisted in its defiance, the Council would make an example of them, as they had done so many times before. Their fleets, equipped with the most advanced weaponry in the galaxy, could reduce Earth's defenses to ash in a matter of days. The prospect of war did not concern them. In their eyes, humanity's resistance was little more than a minor inconvenience. Humanity, however, had no intention of complying with the Council's demands. While the Council dismissed Earth's response as inconsequential, it set in motion preparations that would reveal a side of humanity the galaxy had never seen. For centuries, humans had honed their ability to adapt and innovate, developing technologies and strategies in isolation. Their history of conflict had forged them into a species uniquely suited to thrive in adversity. The Council had underestimated them, and humanity was prepared to capitalize on that miscalculation. The Council's ultimatum had not been delivered in a vacuum. Across the galaxy, other species watched with bated breath, their own histories of submission coloring their expectations. Many viewed humanity's defiance as suicidal, a final act of rebellion before inevitable subjugation. But some, particularly those who had suffered under the Council's dominion, saw a glimmer of hope in humanity's response. If Earth could stand against the Council, it might inspire others to do the same. Humanity's leaders understood the broader implications of their actions. Their defiance was not just about protecting Earth, it was about sending a message to the galaxy. They knew that their response would set a precedent, one that could either embolden or doom countless other civilizations. The stakes were higher than they had ever been, but humanity had never been a species to shrink from a challenge. The Council, oblivious to the undercurrents of rebellion their ultimatum had stirred, moved forward with their plans. They would crush Earth's resistance swiftly and decisively, leaving no doubt about the consequences of defiance. Their fleets mobilized, their vast armadas preparing to enforce the will of the Council. For the Council, this was business as usual, a demonstration of power meant to ensure compliance. They could not have foreseen the response they were about to receive. Humanity's reply, brief and enigmatic, was the first hint that the Council's assumptions were flawed. Earth was not a naive backwater, ripe for exploitation. It was a world of survivors, innovators, and strategists. And it had no intention of bowing to the demands of the Galactic Council. The Galactic Council interpreted humanity's defiance as both predictable and insignificant. In their long history of domination, they had encountered resistance before, and every instance ended the same way, with the dissenting species forced into compliance or obliterated. Humanity's cryptic response was viewed as an act of desperation, a final show of defiance from a species too naive to understand the forces arrayed against them. Confident in their superiority, the Council began preparations to subjugate Earth. Their strategy was straightforward. A demonstration of overwhelming force would send a message not only to humanity but to any other species that might consider resistance. The Council mobilized its fleets, comprising hundreds of warships equipped with advanced weaponry capable of annihilating entire cities from orbit. These fleets were the pride of the Council's military, a reminder of the technological and logistical dominance that kept the galaxy in line. Intelligence reports painted a dismissive picture of humanity's capabilities. Analysts highlighted humanity's fragmented history, their relatively primitive spacefaring technology, and their lack of experience in interstellar warfare. While Earth had made notable progress in certain fields, the Council considered them no match for the technological superiority of its forces. They prepared for a swift campaign, one that would crush humanity's spirit before the conflict could escalate. The Council's leadership debated the scale of the operation. Some argued for a minimal show of force, confident that humanity would capitulate after witnessing the strength of even a fraction of the Council's fleet. Others advocated for an overwhelming deployment to eliminate any possibility of prolonged resistance. The decision was ultimately made to send a sizable fleet, ensuring that humanity would understand the futility of their defiance while keeping the Council's primary forces available for other tasks. As the fleet began its journey to the Sol system, the Council's analysts worked to finalize their strategy. They expected humanity to adopt defensive measures, focusing on protecting Earth from orbital bombardment. The Council planned to exploit this by targeting Earth's satellites and planetary infrastructure, effectively blinding and paralyzing their defenses. Ground invasions would follow if necessary, but the Council expected that humanity would surrender long before such measures were required. The confidence of the Council's leadership was unshaken. They had subdued far more advanced civilizations in the past, species with centuries of interstellar experience. Humanity, by comparison, was a mere upstart, a species whose achievements, while impressive for their age, were inconsequential in the broader context of the galaxy. The Council's forces were prepared to enforce compliance swiftly and efficiently. However, the Council's assumptions about humanity were dangerously flawed. Their analysis relied on outdated information and an incomplete understanding of humanity's technological advancements. They underestimated the speed and ingenuity with which humans could adapt to challenges. More importantly, they failed to account for the psychological and cultural factors that made humanity uniquely resilient in the face of overwhelming odds. Humanity's leaders, fully aware of the Council's plans, had spent decades preparing for this moment. Earth's position as an isolated world on the edge of the galaxy had provided them with the time and space to develop their defenses without drawing attention. Humanity had learned from centuries of conflict that preparation and unpredictability were their greatest assets. While the Council dismissed them as technologically inferior, humanity had quietly developed a fleet of their own, one that blended ingenuity with practical efficiency. The Council's fleet continued its approach, broadcasting warnings to Earth and demanding immediate compliance. These warnings went unanswered. Humanity's silence, intended to provoke uncertainty, was misinterpreted as fear. The Council's leadership, emboldened by what they perceived as humanity's hesitation, increased their rhetoric, threatening devastation if their demands were not met. As the fleet neared the Sol system, its commanders began executing their plan. Initial operations targeted Earth's outer defenses, aiming to disrupt communications and cripple any attempts at resistance. However, they were met with an unexpected level of resistance. Humanity's early warning systems, far more advanced than the Council had anticipated, detected the fleet long before it reached the system's edge. Countermeasures were deployed with precision, disrupting the Council's initial assault. The Council's commanders, though experienced, were unprepared for the level of coordination displayed by humanity's forces. Rather than reacting defensively, humanity launched preemptive strikes that disrupted the fleet's formations and forced them to adjust their strategy. This unorthodox approach caught the Council off guard. Their assumptions about humanity's capabilities had been based on incomplete intelligence, and they were now facing an opponent far more formidable than expected. As the Council's fleet pressed forward, they began to encounter humanity's hidden strength. Earth's fleet, previously dismissed as a minor threat, emerged from strategic positions, revealing designs and technologies that defied the Council's expectations. These ships were not crude imitations of alien designs but entirely unique creations, optimized for both offensive and defensive operations. Humanity's engineers had developed systems that rivaled and, in some cases, surpassed the Council's own technologies. The Council's analysts struggled to comprehend how humanity had achieved such advancements in isolation. The fleet's commanders, now facing significant resistance, requested reinforcements, but the Council's leadership hesitated. They were reluctant to commit additional resources to what was supposed to be a simple operation. This delay allowed humanity to exploit their disarray, launching coordinated strikes that further disrupted the fleet's objectives. What became increasingly clear was that humanity's strategy was not simply to defend Earth but to assert their presence as a force to be reckoned with. They engaged the Council's fleet with precision, targeting key vessels and leveraging their superior knowledge of the local environment. The Council's forces, accustomed to overwhelming their opponents with brute force, found themselves outmaneuvered and outthought. As the Council's fleet struggled to regain control of the situation, humanity's leaders prepared to reveal the full extent of their capabilities. They had not simply built a fleet to defend Earth. They had built a fleet to challenge the very notion of the Council's dominance. This was not merely a battle for survival but a statement of intent. Humanity had no intention of being subjugated, and they were prepared to prove it. As the Galactic Council's fleet advanced into the Sol system, humanity unveiled a response that exceeded all expectations. Emerging from the shadows of Earth's orbital defenses was a fleet of battleships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The designs were distinct, showcasing a blend of efficiency and lethal functionality. Each vessel was a testament to humanity's ingenuity, built not only for war but to send a clear message: humanity would not bow. The Council's commanders, confident in their technological and numerical superiority, were unprepared for the scale and sophistication of humanity's fleet. These ships were not merely defensive constructs but fully operational war machines, equipped with weapons systems that rivaled and, in some instances, surpassed the Council's own. What was most alarming was the strategic precision with which the human fleet maneuvered. Every movement was calculated, every formation deliberate, as if they had spent years preparing for this exact confrontation. The first moments of engagement shattered the Council's assumptions. Humanity's fleet employed tactics the Council had never encountered, blending deception, speed, and overwhelming force. Ships that appeared vulnerable turned out to be traps, drawing Council vessels into kill zones where they were quickly dispatched. Coordinated salvos targeted critical systems on the Council's flagship vessels, disabling them with an efficiency that bordered on surgical precision. The Council's fleet attempted to regroup, relying on their superior numbers to overwhelm the human forces. Yet, humanity's commanders anticipated these moves with uncanny accuracy. Utilizing the natural layout of the Sol system, they turned the local environment into a battlefield advantage. Asteroid belts became ambush points, and the gravitational wells of planetary bodies were used to outmaneuver larger, slower Council vessels. Every engagement revealed another layer of humanity's tactical brilliance. As the battle unfolded, the Council's forces began to falter. Their rigid hierarchical structure, once a source of strength, now became a liability. Decisions from high command were slow to adapt to the rapidly shifting tactics of humanity's fleet. In contrast, human commanders operated with a decentralized approach, allowing for real-time adjustments and exploiting weaknesses with ruthless efficiency. The Council's commanders, accustomed to predictable adversaries, found themselves overwhelmed by humanity's relentless adaptability. One of the most shocking revelations for the Council's fleet was the technological parity, or even superiority, of humanity's weapons systems. Council engineers, analyzing data from the battlefield, struggled to understand how Earth, a planet with no history of interstellar conflict, had developed weaponry capable of piercing their most advanced shielding systems. These weapons were not crude imitations but entirely unique innovations, designed to exploit weaknesses the Council didn't even realize existed. Humanity's fleet also demonstrated a level of resilience that defied logic. Ships that should have been incapacitated continued to fight, their crews improvising repairs and adapting systems in real time. This resilience extended to their tactics, as no single strategy was employed for long. Every engagement felt like a new encounter, forcing the Council's fleet into a reactive stance, constantly struggling to keep up with humanity's evolving strategies. The Council's leadership, observing the battle from a distance, was faced with a harsh reality. Their assumptions about humanity had been catastrophically wrong. What was meant to be a swift and decisive campaign had turned into a protracted conflict that exposed the vulnerabilities of their forces. Reinforcements were called for, but the delays in their arrival only widened the gap in momentum. Humanity, sensing the Council's growing desperation, pressed their advantage with calculated aggression. As the tide of battle shifted, humanity's commanders made a bold decision. Rather than merely defending their territory, they pushed the conflict into offensive territory, targeting the Council's logistical support ships and command vessels. These precise strikes disrupted the Council's supply chains, leaving their fleet increasingly isolated and vulnerable. The human fleet, once thought to be a defensive measure, now revealed itself as a tool of strategic dominance. The psychological impact on the Council's forces was profound. Accustomed to overwhelming their enemies, they now found themselves on the defensive, questioning their assumptions and their leadership. Reports from the front lines described a growing sense of dread among the Council's crews, who had never faced an opponent capable of matching them blow for blow. Morale began to falter, and desertions among Allied auxiliary ships became increasingly common. Humanity, for their part, maintained an air of calculated calm. Their fleet operated with a level of professionalism and discipline that belied their relative inexperience in interstellar warfare. Communications intercepted by the Council revealed no signs of panic or disarray among humanity's ranks. Instead, there was a quiet determination, a resolve to protect their sovereignty at all costs. As the battle reached its crescendo, humanity delivered a final, calculated blow. A coordinated assault targeted the Council's flagship, a symbol of their dominance and authority. The flagship's destruction was not just a tactical victory but a symbolic one, shattering the illusion of the Council's invincibility. Humanity's fleet, having achieved what was thought impossible, withdrew to defensive positions, daring the Council to press further. In the aftermath of the engagement, the Council's fleet was left battered and humiliated. What was meant to be a display of power had turned into a showcase of humanity's resilience and ingenuity. The galaxy, watching from the sidelines, was left in awe. Humanity had not only defended itself but had proven that the Galactic Council was not beyond challenge. The balance of power had shifted, and the implications were far-reaching. For humanity, the battle was more than a victory. It was a statement to the galaxy, a declaration that they would not be subjugated. Their fleet, a product of generations of innovation and determination, had earned its place among the stars. And while the Council retreated to assess the damage, humanity prepared for the next stage, knowing that their defiance had forever changed the course of galactic history. The aftermath of the battle left the Galactic Council reeling. Their fleet, once thought invincible, had been humbled by an opponent they had dismissed as insignificant. The destruction of their flagship and the decisive tactics employed by humanity forced the Council into a position they had not faced in centuries: self-reflection. The loss was not merely a military failure, it was a blow to the Council's reputation and the authority they wielded over the galaxy. As word of the confrontation spread, it ignited shockwaves across the galactic community. Civilizations long subjugated by the Council's demands began to reevaluate their own positions. For centuries, the Council's dominance had been absolute, their demands met without question. Now, humanity had demonstrated that defiance was not only possible but could succeed. The implications were profound. If Earth, an isolated and relatively young civilization, could stand against the Council, what could others achieve with enough determination and preparation? Within the Council, debates grew heated. Some factions pushed for immediate retaliation, demanding the deployment of their remaining fleets to crush humanity before their defiance inspired further resistance. Others, however, urged caution. Humanity's strength was no longer in doubt, and the risk of further humiliation loomed large. A second defeat would irreparably damage the Council's authority and embolden those under their control. Amidst these deliberations, humanity took the opportunity to solidify its position. Leaders from Earth transmitted a message to the Council and the galaxy at large, articulating the principles behind their defiance. They declared that humanity would not be a vassal to any power, that sovereignty was non-negotiable, and that they sought peace but were prepared to defend themselves against aggression. The message, while firm, carried an undertone of pragmatism. Humanity had no desire for war, but they would not shy away from it if provoked. This declaration further complicated the Council's situation. Humanity's stance resonated with many across the galaxy. It was not a declaration of conquest or aggression but a call for respect and independence. This nuanced approach placed the Council in a precarious position. Any further military action against humanity would not only risk another defeat but could also be framed as an attack on the principles of freedom and self-determination, a narrative that many would rally behind. The Council's retreat, both physical and political, marked a turning point. For the first time, they were forced to negotiate from a position of weakness. While no formal peace treaty was signed, an unspoken agreement emerged. The Council would cease their demands for tribute, and humanity would not pursue further military engagements. This uneasy truce was not born of mutual respect but of necessity, with both sides recognizing the costs of prolonged conflict. For humanity, the victory was transformative. Their fleet had proven its worth, and their leaders had demonstrated the ability to navigate complex galactic politics. Earth's position within the galaxy shifted dramatically. No longer seen as an obscure backwater, humanity became a symbol of defiance and resilience. Civilizations across the galaxy began reaching out, seeking alliances and partnerships, hoping to learn from humanity's example. At the same time, humanity remained cautious. The battle had been a victory, but it had also revealed the dangers of attracting attention on the galactic stage. Leaders on Earth understood that their newfound status came with responsibilities and risks. They focused on strengthening their defenses, expanding their fleet, and fostering alliances with like-minded civilizations. The goal was not to build an empire but to ensure that humanity could never again be underestimated or coerced. The Galactic Council, meanwhile, faced an existential crisis. Their authority, long unquestioned, had been challenged in a way that exposed deep flaws in their structure and strategy. Their reliance on overwhelming force and rigid hierarchy had failed against an opponent who thrived on adaptability and ingenuity. the Council's leaders initiated reforms, seeking to modernize their fleet and improve their intelligence capabilities. Yet, these efforts were undermined by internal divisions, as factions vied for power and influence in the wake of their humiliation. The galaxy as a whole entered a period of uncertainty. Humanity's defiance had set a precedent, inspiring hope and fear in equal measure. For those under the Council's control, it was a beacon, a reminder that even the most entrenched power could be challenged. For the Council and other dominant powers, it was a warning of the potential consequences of underestimating their subjects. In the years that followed, humanity's influence grew steadily. They became known not as conquerors but as defenders of sovereignty and equality, a species that valued independence above all else. Their technology and tactics were studied and admired, their leaders invited to mediate disputes and offer guidance. Humanity's place in the galaxy was no longer questioned. They were a force to be reckoned with, a civilization that had earned its seat at the table. The battle between humanity and the Galactic Council became a defining moment in galactic history, a turning point that reshaped the balance of power. For the Council, it was a reminder of the dangers of complacency and arrogance. For humanity, it was a vindication of their values and a testament to their resilience. And for the galaxy, it was a symbol of change, a harbinger of a new era where the old hierarchies would be challenged, and new possibilities would emerge. In the end, humanity's defiance was not just about rejecting the Council's demands. It was about proving that strength does not come from domination or subjugation but from the unwavering commitment to one's principles. Humanity's battleships were more than weapons of war. They were a statement of identity, a declaration that Earth would chart its own course, no matter the cost. And in doing so, humanity had redefined its role in the galaxy, carving out a legacy that would endure for generations.